Hello, welcome or welcome back to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all the places you can find me should be linked in the description box below this video. Fancy seeing you here today. How are we all? Day 4 of the 12 cast-ons, and I'm starting this on New Year's Eve, but the video will get posted on New Year's Day. So Happy New Year to you all. Let's hope 2022 is a kind one and we all manage to stay in good health and good spirits throughout this year. Let's hope that things really do start to improve. Right, we're not going to dwell on that too much because there's enough of that stuff in the news, isn't there? Day 4 for cast-ons, and I hinted in my video yesterday that I was going to be doing something a little bit more off the wall again today. This unplanned 12 cast-ons is taking all sorts of unexpected turns. We had our first fibre prep ever for the 12 cast-ons yesterday, and today I'm back to knitting. The reason it's a little bit off the wall is on my list of projects that I had to pick from, the ones that I had sort of semi-planned, I had a space which just said hat, which I know is very nondescript, but the hat sort of space in the sort of cast-on list is for a very particular purpose. So as you know, last year now, because this video will go up on the 1st, we had our huge community effort to collect socks for the West Midlands Ambulance Service sock appeal. And although at the end, I will say, when we were coming up to deadline and I had, 15 tubes to turn into socks, it did become a little bit of a slog. I mean, I do not begrudge spending the time at all, but it became quite intense. So I'm not planning anything like that this year. However, I did like the process of knitting for donation. I have reached a point in my knitting career now where, quite honestly, I have enough of every knitted item, possibly with the exception of mitts and gloves, but I don't tend to wear those a whole ton anyway. But I have got a whole drawer, well, 2 drawers full of socks. I have got a whole pile of sweaters now. I've got loads of shawls, I've got cows, I've got a box of hats. I've got more than enough for me. But that, of course, is not going to stop me knitting more for myself or stop me knitting at all, because I just love the process and it's something that I almost need to do for my own sort of well-being. Creating with my hands brings me a lot of joy and calms me a lot. And yeah, it's just something that I need to do, and I'm sure many of you will relate to that. So I have decided this year to start making and to start collecting hats to donate. Here in the UK, we have something called the UK Hand Knitting Association, and they're an association which helps to promote hand knitting, the benefits of hand knitting, and it also has started to do more and more to promote the sort of use of our local yarn shops on the high street, which when I was a bricks and mortar yarn shop owner, I appreciated that effort. And for the last couple of years, they have had a Hats for Homeless appeal, and they collect hats towards the sort of end of autumn for donating to homeless charities to hand out to folks who are homeless to help to keep them a little bit more warm and cosy through the colder months. I'm hoping they will do that again this year, for my plan is to try and knit a whole bunch of hats to donate to that cause. But I feel like even if they don't specifically do that campaign, I have seen other charities asking for hat donations. So I'm fairly confident that by making some hats through the year, I will find somewhere towards the end of the year to donate them to. So my plan is to try and knit a hat a month, which should be doable. A hat really doesn't take that long, and depending on the weight of yarn, if you choose a heavier weight yarn, you can almost get a hat on and off the needles in an evening. So that is one of my knitting goals for 2022. And in the main, I think I'm going to be choosing some simpler patterns, some sort of beanie style patterns, maybe with a little bit of texture, just to keep the knitting interesting for me. And I will be able to use this as a way to use up some leftovers from previous projects, from skeins that in my stash that maybe I have purchased and loved at the time, but have decided for one reason or another that the colours just don't speak to me anymore. I thought I'd share with you because a few people have said that they have enjoyed these videos this year for the fact that I've been doing a little bit more ramble and sort of explanation and chatter around how I've been choosing my projects. So I thought I'd show you a few of the hat projects that I'm hoping to make throughout the year, just to give you an idea of the sorts of hats that I will be looking to make. So I've got a couple in my library on Ravelry. I'm just going to scroll through and pick them out for you. So one of the hats that I'll definitely be making in the future, although not casting on today, is the retreat hat by our lovely friend Zoe of Pins and Needles. And Zoe originally designed this hat for the first Knit Tea retreat, but the pattern is now available on Ravelry. It's a lovely beanie style hat with a little bit of texture, which is exactly the sort of thing that I'm hoping to knit for this purpose, because it'll be a little bit of interest for me, but it won't be so complicated that it will take me forever, and obviously I want to try and make as many hats as I can. So this is the retreat hat. So hopefully you can see there are little bumps of texture in this hat. So that's definitely one that's on my list. And there's another one that I have. It's the February hat by Kate Gagnon Osborne. And this one is a free pattern on Ravelry. But again, it's got lots of different texture in it. So it should be quite a interesting knit for me, but still sort of simple enough to get through relatively quickly. So there are a couple of hat patterns that I've got in my library and my queue already that I know I'm going to use this challenge as an excuse for me to cast those on. I'm also going to be having a look through some of my pattern books upstairs and some of the other patterns that I've got in my library. I've got a few pattern collections that I've bought in the past that include hats. So yeah, I'm just going to use this as an excuse to, you know, knit up some fun hats. So the first question that I have for you today is, please, if you've got any hat suggestions, leave them in the comments below. So as I say, something that maybe has a little bit of interest, or just a really simple beanie pattern that you just know works really well for you. Preferably free patterns rather than paid for patterns, because I don't want to spend a lot of money on patterns that I'm only going to potentially knit once. So yeah, if you have any hat suggestions, I would be most grateful if you'd leave those in the comments below. Today, I'm going to go for a challenge. Because it's the 12 cast-ons, go big or go home, right? So I have up in the craft attic a whole collection of books and pattern magazines on a little shelf. They're mostly pom-pom magazines. I've got some making magazines in there. There's some Shetland Wool Week annuals. And my thought for my cast on today is I'm going to go up to the craft attic. I am going to close my eyes, run my hand along that shelf and pick out a book or a magazine at random, and the first magazine that I pick out that's got a hat pattern in there, that's what I'm casting on today. So I have no idea what the cast on will be. And I am imagining that the hats in those magazines and books are going to be a little bit more complex than the ones that I will be knitting in the future. So yeah, let's wander upstairs and see what fate has in store for us today. Right, okay, let's do this. Let fate take its course. So here we are, sat in front of one of the shelves that's got my sort of knitting library on it. And this top shelf here has got all of my pom-poms. There's some making magazines. There's some issues of the Shetland Wool Week annual. And I'm just going to run my hand along here and randomly pick out a magazine and see if we can find a hat. Now, it could take a couple of tries because not all of these are going to feature hat patterns. I think a good portion will, but there could be a chance that the first one we pull out will not have hat, so we might have a couple of tries. I'm hoping that the universe will lead me towards a issue that has, I don't know, say a nice textured hat in chunky weight yarn that's gonna be on and off the needles in no time. However, I feel that the more likely possibility is I'm gonna get something that's a little bit more intricate than that. But you will have to believe, because obviously I could edit this however I want, but you'll have to believe that I am true to my word and I'm going to go with whatever hat comes first. Although having said that, if it ends up being a lace weight hat with lots of intricate lace work and cables, I'm definitely editing that out. But other than that, I promise there will be no camera trickery here. So can I do it this way? It's a bit awkward for me to reach a magazine, but yeah, I think I can do it this way. So I'm not looking at my viewfinder. Not that it would really matter, because I'd have to go some to recognise from the spine of these what issue of the magazine it is and remember. I'd have to have some sort of awesome memory to remember every pattern in every issue here. So let's give this a try. Just gonna randomly 1, 2, 3, and my hand is there. Oh, it's a Shetland Wool Week annual. If you saw a little cut there, that's because I was coughing my heart out. I don't think I could believe it. This is Wool Week Annual 2019. So the good thing about the Shetland Wool Week is often there's a couple of different hats in here, so we might have a choice. Let's have a little flick through. I think I'll have a flick through. This is the issue, so you know that I'm not cheating. I'll have a quick flick through off camera and put markers in if I can find, you know, a hat or several, and then we'll come back to you in a minute. Okay, so I've had a flick through and I had some handy dandy tea bags from my package that was sent to me by Angie the other day, and I'm drinking my way through some of this tea, but I hadn't taken it all downstairs yet, so I'm using tea bags as my bookmarkers. And there are actually 3 patterns in this Wool Week annual to choose from, so let's check them out. You may already be aware that the annual is produced in conjunction with Shetland Wool Week each year, and every year they have a hat, like an official hat of that year's Wool Week. And for this particular year, which is 2019, the hat was the roadside beanie designed by Oliver Henry. There is one picture of the hat. The best picture of the hat is also opposite the chart pattern, so let me see if I can hold that up without revealing any. So there we go, it's a nice pattern with sheep and some boats on it, but honestly that one is probably the least favourite of all of the Shetland Wool Week hats that they've released of mine for my own personal taste. However, I do also have to bear in mind that I'm not knitting this hat for me, I'm actually knitting it to give away. So it could be fun to knit a hat that I wouldn't choose for my own personal preference or personal tastes. Again, I like the design and I could change it. The thing that doesn't really appeal to me, I think, is the boats for some reason. So I could definitely change the design slightly. I could just leave that panel out, couldn't I, and make a sort of stripe, or I could repeat the sheep pattern potentially. I'd have to look at the charts and see what was possible. So yeah, a definite possibility. Oh, sorry if there's any angle changes, my camera battery died. Honestly, it's been doorbells, batteries dying, and so I'm not quite sure where my last recording would have cut off, so just in case I'll do this bit again. So the second choice is the Shetland Muse hat by Felicity Ford, and there is the pattern, and that's just gorgeous, isn't it? And for anyone who knows me well, or even slightly, those kind of colours, oranges, browns, blues, are completely in my wheelhouse. It's got a beautiful sheepy design on it, and I reckon that might be something that I would choose to make for myself in the future, probably in those exact same colours. So for that reason, I think I'm going to discount that design this time. And then the third choice in this magazine, so it's probably quite fortuitous, although I knew as soon as I picked out the Wool Week annual it was going to be colour work. It's quite fortuitous because there's usually multiple hat patterns to choose from, which gives me a little bit of choice. So the third pattern is called the Staverness Toury, and it is by Terry Malcolmson. And I think of the 3, this is the one that I'm going to choose. It's got a really lovely colour work pattern, it looks quite rhythmical, and it's 2 colours. So whereas with the roadside beanie I would have to sort of potentially forage for quite a few colours to get that pattern done, 2 colours seems quite appealing. It should be fairly straightforward to dive my stash and find a couple of yarns that are going to suit. Of course, it's knit in Spindrift, which is a 4-ply yarn, so I am going to have a little think about what I've got in my stash that I haven't got reserved for project. Yeah, I'm excited. It's got a nice colourwork look to it, so it's a slight challenge, but it should be reasonably straightforward in terms of not too many colour changes. I think before the day gets too old, I'm going to take myself out for a walk, get a bit of fresh air, have my constitutional, as they say. And while I am doing that, I can begin to rack my brains, because I know my stash reasonably well. I'll rack my brains as to what I might be able to use for this hat. It's lovely and mild out here today. I've had to take my hat off because I was just too warm, and I've taken my jumper off before I even came out because I didn't think it'd be that cold, and I'm still too warm. I'm settling for a cliff-top walk today. You can see the sea in the background. There's lots of people out and about today, which is understandable. It's a grey day, but it's pretty mild, as I said, and a lot of people will still be off work at the moment, so I'm not going to chance it by going right down onto the esplanade because it's busy enough on the cliff-top walk. So I think down on the esplanade it'll probably be packed, but it's nice to be outside. It was nice. I enjoyed my walk, and it gave me time to think about my project. Before I left, I checked the yarn requirements in the pattern, and it uses just 2 balls, 2 25-gram balls of Spindrift. So I knew that I didn't need a whole lot of yarn to start this pattern. And as I was walking around, I've got quite a few balls of Spindrift, which I bought from Caroline when she had a de-stash of that yarn. But then it occurred to me that I had this yarn in my stash already wound up, because I purchased this to knit a hat for James a couple of years ago, and I purchased it online. I can't even remember what the yarn is now. I've lost the ball band many moons ago. It might have been a Lang Yarns, I can't remember. But I bought it for a hat, and on the website it said this yarn was a DK yarn, and when it came it's just fine, really fine. So it's definitely not a DK in my book. So I'm going to use this because it's a beautiful colour and it has been just languishing in my stash for ever and a day. And then for the contrast colour, I have got left over from my vlog that I did earlier in 2021, which was the beginning of my series of someone else choosing my knit project. I'll link the video below if I remember. And the lovely Alex of Late Night Knits pointed me in the direction of Shiller's There yarn, and I knit a Kira hat from Shiller's There, and it came in a kit, and one of the colours in the kit was just this neutral, sort of natural creamy colour, and I've got quite a lot left over. Not quite as much as the green, but I'm fairly sure this should be enough to do the colour work. The cream obviously offers a nice contrast against that lovely rich dark sort of mossy green, and yeah, hopefully I can get this done and someone will enjoy it. I'm quite excited about this project, more excited than I expected to be. And having said that, you might be thinking, Ange, why are you doing this if if you thought you might not enjoy the experience? Well, part of the ethos of the 12 cast-ons for me was to use things that I already have. And when I thought about setting myself a little challenge around making these hats, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to actually dive into my pattern books and try and find a hat pattern that, you know, is going to be beautiful, but maybe not something that I need or I would choose to knit for myself anytime soon. So in that way, I get to use something that I have and hopefully gift it on and someone else will enjoy it. So just out of interest, I looked up when I knit the hat for James in the other yarn that I eventually ended up buying and using for his hat, and it was back in 2016, so the green yarn has been in my stash since 2016. So pretty good that I'm finally finding a use for it. That makes me happy.
Happy New Year!
Cheers! Good morning, lovely friends. I hope you are doing well and you've had a lovely start to your New Year's Day. If you stayed up to celebrate and welcome the new year, then I hope you had some special celebrations with your loved ones. Nice and gentle and most importantly safe, I hope. James and I stayed up to see in the new year. It was just the two of us and the cat. And yeah, it was lovely. I have already been up and out today. Despite staying up till after 1 AM, my body decided that I needed to be wide awake at 7, which is less sleep than I usually like. But yeah, I've been out and I have been down to the beach and enjoyed a lovely sunrise, and I'll share some of that footage in tomorrow's vlog, so stay tuned for that. Of course, it is time before I confess my progress on my Stavaness Touri. It is time to share some of the wonderful cast-ons that have been happening over the last 24 hours or so in our community. So Tammy, who has the Yarning at the Homestead podcast here on YouTube, has cast on loads of projects. She started a litmus cowl, a hygge and hearth scarf. Hygge and hearth scarf. Try and say that 10 times fast. A rocket tee, and has also started a needle felted Jack Frost elf, which just sounds amazing. Apologies if you can hear jingling in the background. My cat Newt is playing with her Christmas present from Fred, who is a lovely cat owned by Angie, who's part of our community here. While I'm chatting to you, I'm going to see if I can take a video on my phone of Newt messing around with her new toy, and I'll insert it in a bit, perhaps at the end of the video. So yes, if you hear any errant jingling, it's just the cat playing playing in the background. Right, where was I with the cast-ons? Yes, Tammy has started a needle felted elf, which just sounds amazing, and I'm happy to have a needle felted project for the 12 cast-ons. Ellie has cast on a Cladonia shawl from, wait for it, neon handspun yarn combined with mohair, which just sounds fabulous. I cannot wait to see that project as it grows. Alex of Late Night Knits here on YouTube is spinning up some yarn for a blanket. Now the blanket project isn't new as such. I think Alex had started the blanket with a little bit of handspun and then also mixed in some commercial yarn, and on a recent whip organisation decided that she doesn't like the commercial yarn part of the blanket, so I believe she's ripped back and is specifically starting a new spin so that she has yarn for the blanket, which is fantastic. Susan has cast on a hat. Kate managed her pinhole cast on for her throw, if you remember we were chatting about that yesterday, and has cast on a West Fjords Wanderer by Stephen West from Stash Yarn, and I checked out the shawl. I wasn't familiar with that pattern, but it's a little it's I think a few years old now, but it's a massive shawl that is definitely one of Stephen West's sort of schlanket shawls. Newty, why are you being so noisy? She's having a really good play with that mouse. Kate has managed to stash dive for all 7 colours for that shawl, which is just amazing. That's completely on par with the 12 cast-ons ethos of using up what we have. Jeanette has cast on and cast off for a Musselburgh hat, and has also started a Nordic Nights sweater, and Jeanette's Nordic Nights is going to be a handspun project. So she's cast on, but she said that she's having to pause because she's also spinning her contrast colour and hasn't got that ready yet. So I hope you manage to get your spinning done soon, Jeanette, so you can continue with that one. Sharon has started some socks, and Sharon said she never thought she'd be knitting socks, so that's awesome. Helen, who has the Mousy Makes podcast here on YouTube, and if you're still in the mood for some beautiful, calm, festive feelings, then, and you haven't already watched Helen's Vlogmas, I can highly recommend you go and check out Helen's channel. She had 24 fabulous Vlogmas videos featuring all sorts of Christmassy crafts, and beautifully produced with some stop motion animation and a little story, sort of wandering through her days of Vlogmas. And yeah, it's just beautiful videos. So Helen has started a crochet project. She received the Crochet Iconic Women book for her birthday and has started an Emmeline Pankhurst doll, which is just so much fun. Lynn has started a beautiful bunny project by Claire Garland, and she said she's knit several of Claire Garland's animal patterns before and has given them to her grandson, but she's decided she's making a bunny just for herself, which I love. Tracy has started her third cast on. She's making a slip stitch knitting bag, and she said she has some plans for the bag and she will reveal all as she gets closer to finishing that project, so I'm very intrigued by that. Joelle has started a pair of Death Flake mittens, and I want to apologise to Joelle because I've been to this point pronouncing her name wrong, so I do apologise for that. Thank you for correcting me, and if I do pronounce anyone's names wrong, then please do let me know, because I appreciate you and I want to get it right. So yes, Joelle is knitting a pair of Death Flake mittens for her Skull Obsessed GP. Now I'm not sure if a Skull Obsessed GP is a good thing or not, but but Joelle, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. You are gift knitting already. Sherry, who has the Twisted Dye Kitchen podcast here on YouTube, has started 6 projects already, which is just amazing. So Sherry has cast on some shawls, some fingerless mitts, some mittens and a sweater. So Sherry is going great guns with her cast ons. And then the lovely Donna has recently started a new spin and is spinning up a Border Leicester fleece, which is a fleece I've not yet tried or tackled, and definitely one to add to my list. But the super special thing about the spin is that the fleece comes from a ram that Donna used to own, used to care for, so that makes it even more special a project, doesn't it? So as always, thank you to everyone who has joined in the cast on fun, and please keep letting me know in the comments what you're casting on as we go through these videos. So time for me to share my progress on my hat, and I made okay progress. I was hoping to make a little bit more for a hat, but hey, it's all good. Oh no, I've just popped my stitches off of the end of the needle. I keep doing this. I need to get one of my needle tubes or some needle stoppers. I'm knitting it on a short circular and I keep trying to stretch the stitches out and I end up pushing the stitches off the end of the needle. So here is my progress so far. I'm about a third of the way through the colour work chart. So you work, I think it's about 25 rows of colour work, then there's another band of sort of solid colour, and then there's a little bit more colour work on the top of the hat. And yeah, it's just been a really lovely knit, as I suspected it would be. The colour work is fairly intuitive to follow. It looks probably a little bit more complex than it does, but it doesn't colour work always. And I'm going to have more than enough yarn. My contrast yarn has barely gone down and I'm already a third of the way sort of through that. So yeah, all good. I love the green colour as well, although I'm not a massive fan of this yarn. As I say, it's a bit of a mystery yarn, I really can't remember, but it's quite thick and thin. There are some really thin spots, and that means my colour work is not the most even. I'm having to remember, let me try and show you what I mean. There's a few spots in the colour work chart where there's like one green stitch surrounded by a whole lot of white stitches, and there's a couple of places where the yarn has gone really thin at that point, so I'm having to try and remember in future rows to adjust my tension a little bit and try and leave those green stitches a little bit looser so they don't get lost. And I mean, it's easy to do that anyway if your tension is not quite right, but in this case I am totally blaming the yarn rather than my tension. It is fine, my tension. I'm not making excuses. It just so happens that in a couple of places where that sort of single green stitch comes into play, the yarn has just hit a really thin spot. So, but I don't think it really matters. You can definitely still see the colour work pattern emerging, and a few, missed stitches here and there is not going to really make a difference. So yes, that's it. We have reached the end of day 4 of my cast-ons, and I shall look forward to coming back tomorrow and sharing my day 5 project, and also sharing the New Year's Day sunrise with you. So I hope you will join me for that video, but until we do get to spend time together again, I hope you get to do some of the things that you enjoy. Great big woolly hugs to you all, and Happy New Year. Bye.